The name of this child is Takuya. He once heard that dreams are born from suppressed desires, and he had just had a dream about his deceased family. So what is his desire? While he was thinking, a teacher came to call Takuya to class. Through the teacher's words, we learn that he often skips school. The teacher also offered her condolences for Takuya's recently deceased father. However, he saw it as something normal, knowing the news about his father was better than him going missing forever. Dying in a cave during research was something Takuya had predicted for his father. Aside from calling Takuya to class, the teacher had another favor to ask. A new transfer student had just arrived at the school, and Takuya's task was to keep an eye on that student. He found it very annoying and a waste of time, but the teacher said it was a fresh, beautiful girl. Like director Lie H letter 1EA3I, Takuya immediately turned face and agreed. At that moment, an announcement over the speaker system called Takuya to meet someone at the historical research room, and the person on the speaker even referred to Takuya as Sir. On his way there, Takuya met a boy named Yuuki, who continuously tried to persuade Takuya to return to the kendo team. Takuya refused because he practiced that discipline for the sake of his father, and now that his father was 6 feet under, he quit. On the contrary, Yuuki joined many clubs, especially the Historical Research Club. At the research room, they met Mio. As soon as they met, Takuya and Mio started mocking each other. Finding the argument with Takuya too exhausting, Mio dragged Yuuki away, leaving Takuya to enter the room and look for the person who wanted to meet him. After waiting a while, someone arrived surprisingly. It was Ayumi, Takuya's stepmother. It turned out that the announcement was calling for her, not Takuya. They called his stepmother because the geotechnics construction project was having problems due to strange events continually occurring. She would probably head out to inspect the beach after the meeting. The person who called Takuya's mother to the meeting was Mr. Rusoji. He told Takuya there was no need to leave because he had something to discuss regarding his father. Mr. Rusoji had worked for many years with Takuya's father on the research project, and he expressed a desire to continue his father's work. He saw it as a way to honor the deceased. If both agreed, he hoped Takuya's stepmother could send Takuya's father's research notes to his home. He also asked if Takuya's father had entrusted either of them with anything special. Both replied that they had received nothing. When Takuya asked what it was revealed to be an artifact. After the meeting, Takuya met Miss Mitsuki. The two were quite close and did not use honorific language. We also learned that Mitsuki used to be Mr. Rusoji's secretary, but because she was too exhausted, she became a temporary teacher. She had heard about Takuya's father's passing and thought he would be sad, but he remained calm. Takuya asked, "What if I was sad?" Mitsuki whispered in his ear that she would comfort him. After saying that, Mitsuki left. That afternoon after school, Takuya was stopped by a reporter asking about the project his stepmother was working on. Takuya said that the construction site was near the beach, and if it caused the beach to disappear, then he wouldn't be able to see girls in swimsuits anymore. That would be a real shame. Returning home, he saw a box on the table. Takuya eagerly thought it was an adult toy and opened it. But unfortunately, it wasn't. It was something very strange. Then he received a strange phone call. On Yuuki's side, he and Mio were researching something. She was taking notes on a rock slab and discovered a flower blooming there. Meanwhile, Takuya was examining the strange object. On TV, the same reporter from earlier was broadcasting news about locals opposing his stepmother's project. They even aired the clip of what Takuya had said. On television, while his stepmother was trying to reassure the public, a violent bolt of lightning suddenly struck behind her, causing an explosion. Worried for his mother, Takuya hurried to find her. Someone had died, but fortunately, his stepmother was safe. Then a man named Hideo, the foreman, arrived and asked Takuya to leave the restricted area. However, Takuya was rather stubborn, so the man left, allowing the mother and son to talk. Takuya asked if that was the useless man his mother had mentioned before. His mother then told him to go home first as she wouldn't be returning that night. Outside, as he was getting his bike, Takuya met Mio and Yuuki again. They talked about how the lightning strike seemed very strange when they were on the island. Suddenly, a girl appeared and warned that it was very dangerous and advised them to stay away from that place. The next day, everyone was excitedly waiting for the new transfer student. As the teacher brought her in, Takuya suddenly dashed out and stripped off all his clothes to scare them, but no one was afraid. Even wearing 10 pairs of pants couldn't save him from the shame. The girl then introduced herself as Kana. She was assigned to sit next to Takuya. Without hesitation, Kana told Takuya that he should stop his mother from continuing the construction project. Otherwise, a terrible accident would happen. After class, Takuya went to the research room to ask Mr. Rosoji about the artifact. But the teacher was busy, so he had to leave. Returning home, he received another package. Upon opening it, it was a book about the theorem of the structure of parallel worlds and how to build a reflection device. When he opened it, he discovered a page with a drawing that looked like the artifact. It was called a reflection device. At the bottom of the package was a letter from Takuya's father. In the letter, he said he was not dead but had only disappeared, and he asked Takuya to collect the gemstones and go to a place called Ken no Miseki that night, where someone would be waiting for him. Without thinking too much, he got on his bike and went. He arrived at the 2 rock formations, hoping to meet his father, but instead found a blonde girl unconscious. He checked on her, and when she woke up, she seemed extremely happy and kissed Takuya before disappearing. At that moment, his stepmother and Mr. Rosoji appeared behind Takuya. The teacher said everything was predicted by his father. His father had left behind that device, allowing Takuya to cross through space, called Newman. His father had discovered the existence of a law that governs the world, and his mother was the inspiration for him. The teacher confirmed that Takuya's parents were still alive in another world, and Takuya himself was the proof of that. After saying that, the teacher pulled out a firearm and demanded Takuya hand over the artifact. It was clearly not a lighter. Takuya asked if the artifact could help him see his parents again. The teacher confirmed it. It was the only device that could see the infinite variability of space-time. He then said that Takuya had to repent or eat a bullet. Suddenly, a resonance phenomenon occurred. Earthquakes and lightning happened continuously. The teacher guessed that the blonde girl earlier had done something before disappearing. He still tried to take the artifact, but in that moment, time froze. Takuya saw Kana from afar, and then Takuya was taken back to the 2 rock formations. Thinking he had just taken drugs, Takuya returned to his room and slept. The next day, Takuya woke up at 8:34 am on July 26, 1994. He ran to school to question Mr. Rosoji about what happened the night before, but the teacher said that he and Takuya's stepmother had been in meetings for the past few days. Feeling that something was very wrong, Takuya went up to the school rooftop to review the book about the parallel world. He began to explore the functions of the artifact. First, it could rewind time to a previous point. Just like a checkpoint in a game, just save the location to return to later. Second, whatever he brought with him would also rewind along with him. Takuya recalled a conversation he had with his father, where they talked about how history also affects the timeline, something called the grandfather paradox. You can look it up on Wiki, because explaining it would be too long. From reading the book, Takuya also learned that the reflection device allowed its user to travel to parallel worlds. While deeply focused on reading, Takuya didn't notice Kana watching him. Startled, he quickly left. At the end of the school day, teacher Eriko announced that summer vacation would start from today and reminded the students to make sure they finished their summer homework. As for Takuya, he then went to the research room and asked Mio and Yuuki whether he had come there yesterday. Both said that he did come and looked for Mr. Rosoji. Still not convinced, Takuya called his mother to ask about the conversation between her and the teacher regarding his father's project. His stepmother confirmed that they did talk and that she had agreed to give his father's research notes to the teacher. However, since there were many personal items in it, she asked Takuya to sort it out before handing it over to Mr. Rosoji. Since he wasn't busy, Takuya agreed. While at it, he also invited his two friends to come over and help. On their way home, they talked about the strange incidents happening in the city. Upon arriving at Takuya's house, all three entered his father's room to begin organizing. While doing so, Takuya found a locked cabinet. Mio then discovered that Takuya's father had still been pursuing the theory of the 400-year cycle. According to him, Japanese history undergoes a major transformation every 400 years. Around the year 1600, the Edo shogunate was established. Around 1200, the Kamakura shogunate was established. Around 800, the capital was moved to Heian Kyo, and around 400, the imperial court unified Japan. The common point in all of these was that the origin of all problems came from foreigners. Takuya's father believed that all Japanese traditions had been brought in by foreigners, and he was heavily criticized for that. Not long after, the three finished cleaning up. Seeing that it was still early, Mio invited the other two to go up to Triangle Mountain. They went to the place with the two rock formations and unexpectedly encountered Kana, who was also there. So it turned out she was the one who had placed the flowers there. Mio asked what her purpose in doing that was, but Kana remained silent and left. Mio then continued to take notes on the writings on the rock. The two stones had been there for 8,000 years. It could be said that the writings on the stones were even older than the four great ancient civilizations. After returning from the mountain, Takuya found that the site manager, Hideo, was being questioned by a group of workers about a recent lightning strike that had killed someone. The man didn't dare admit that it was his own order, instead blaming his boss Takuya's stepmother. Takuya also found out that this man had been acting on his own without permission from his mother. He even told Takuya's group to stop going to Triangle Mountain because they were going to destroy the rock formations. Mio objected, saying that those stones were cultural heritage of the city, but he said the mayor had already granted permission, so they had no right to interfere, and if they wanted to, they could go sue. But the guy messed with the wrong people, because the girl standing in front of him was the daughter of the city's mayor. Upon hearing that, the coward instantly backed off and ran away to avoid trouble. That night, when Takuya got home, he found a note from his mother saying she wouldn't be home today. So he had instant noodles for dinner. While lying down watching TV, he was still thinking about what had happened the day before. He then went to the research institute to find his mother. The guard said she had just left for the company that rents scientific equipment. Takuya followed her to a warehouse, where his mother was being threatened by two thug-like men to hand over the company's documents. From outside, Takuya saved a checkpoint before going in. He then went in to protect his mother. However, no high school student has ever won against two gangsters, so his stepmother handed over the documents to ensure Takuya's safety. However, the two men even tried to assault Takuya's mother. Takuya rushed in to fight, but one punch was enough to knock him down. Not giving up, Takuya used the artifact to rewind to the saved point. This time, he brought a stick with him, but ended up getting punched by both men again. He continued to rewind and brought his trophy inside, but it was useless. Just as he was about to load the save again, the cowardly Hideo suddenly appeared like it was all scripted. Surprisingly, with just some arm flailing and kicking, he scared off the two gangsters. He then helped Takuya's mother bring him home to treat his injuries. He then offered his help anytime she needed it and left. After that, the mother and son sat down to talk. She was very sad that Takuya kept throwing himself into danger, but at the same time, she was very happy because he had truly grown up. However, she asked him not to do reckless things anymore. Their family only had the two of them left. The next day, Takuya went to summer school. Yuuki came to invite him to join the club, but Takuya found it annoying since he was still injured from his bike fall. Wanting to skip class, he told Yuuki to attend in his place while he thought it over. He then went to the infirmary and happened to run into Kana and Misariko. He accidentally saw Kana's necklace and remembered that when he was a child, he had met someone who also had a necklace like that. He approached her and asked about the necklace. Kana said it wasn't jewelry, it was the flame of her life. She then left. Miss Eriko told him that Mitsuki was looking for him. On the rooftop, Mitsuki wanted to ask Takuya what he planned to do after graduation. Through their conversation, we learned that Mitsuki had loved Takuya's father, but her feelings had not been reciprocated. She was currently in charge of organizing his father's research. She also said that recently, Mr. Risoji had been acting very strangely. He had become more irritable, almost like a different person. He had become completely obsessed with the research, as if he were possessed. Takuya said that he would keep an eye on the teacher, and if anything happened, he would tell her. After that, he received a phone call from his stepmother. She had forgotten some important documents at home and asked Takuya to bring them to her. When he arrived at the research institute's gate, there were already many citizens protesting in front of it. The security guard brought Takuya inside. On the way, he met that guy named Video or Hideo or whatever. Takuya didn't bother to remember the names of cowards like him who offered to deliver the documents for him, but Takuya refused. He then delivered the documents directly to his mother, who was pleased, though she didn't have much time since she had to rush to a press conference. Meanwhile, that guy Video secretly stole the documents. At the press conference, Takuya met the female reporter from before. She also knew he was the son of the famous doctor since the two looked very much alike. At that moment, Takuya's mother presented reports on the lightning-related accidents and proposed a solution involving specialized suits. However, many of the victims' families claimed the suits were ineffective and continuously objected. The press conference ended in chaos. Not yet recovered, Takuya's mother had to attend another TV interview. Late at night, she came home drunk. Takuya helped her inside for some water. She confessed that she was exhausted with everything and hugged Takuya as if to release all her pressure. The next day, that guy Video called Takuya's mother saying he had something important to discuss. Takuya answered and just let him wait. Over at Mio's side, her father had decided to send her to study in the US to avoid the recent scandals, which made her very sad to the point where, when Takuya teased her on the way to school, she didn't even respond. Behind the two of them, a suspicious figure was watching. At school, Takuya met the reporter again. She had just interviewed Mr. Risoji and happened to have something to discuss with Takuya. She wanted to know more about his stepmother's work because she was currently investigating the geotechnics project, the collusion between geotech and the mayor. She asked whether Mio, the mayor's daughter, knew anything about it. Takuya wasn't going to sell out his friend, but the reporter said there was no need to betray anyone. The one in the wrong was the mayor, and didn't Takuya want his friend to be on the right path? She then gave him her business card, saying he could call her anytime, and introduced herself as Kaori. After days of skipping class, Takuya returned to summer school. Looking at Kaori's card again, he noticed a warning written on the back: "Be careful of that coward Video." Feeling uneasy, Takuya hurried home but was stopped by Eriko. Knowing he couldn't escape, he saved a checkpoint right there. A little later, an announcement came over the PA system. Takuya had a call. It was from his mother's manager. They said she hadn't come to the institute. When Takuya asked what had happened, they didn't say much, only that her project might involve illegal activities. Filled with worry, Takuya rushed home and saw that guy Video groping his mother. Enraged, Takuya dragged the same guy who had once fought off two gangsters and started beating him up. However, his mother stopped him and even slapped him. Seeing his mother so concerned about that scumbag made Takuya furious. He stormed out, saying they could do whatever they wanted. He then arranged to meet Kaori and asked her about that guy Video. Clearly something had happened. Kaori brought Takuya into a hotel for a more private conversation. Coincidentally, in the next room, Kana was meeting the suspicious man who had been following Takuya and Mio that morning. Kaori revealed that confidential data had just been stolen from Geotech yesterday, and Takuya's mother was about to be fired and held responsible for it. Some believed she had sold the data. Kaori also knew that Geotech had called Takuya. She believed his mother had been set up, which was why she needed to infiltrate Geotech to prove her innocence. When Takuya asked what he needed to do, She said she only needed his mother's green access card. He just had to swap the real card with a fake one, and that would be enough. Whether he believed her or not was up to him, but the information would soon be made public, which would be very bad for his mother. After piecing things together, Takuya realized who had framed his mother. He rushed home, but it was too late. The scene was in chaos, and his mother had already slit her wrists and passed away in the bathroom. Takuya quickly tried to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. Looking at his mother's cold body, Takuya made up his mind. This was the first time he felt grateful for his father. Takuya then returned to the checkpoint. Takuya rushed home and punched that guy Video, then kicked him out of the house. The guy threatened to have Takuya thrown in jail and then ran off. Thinking that everything was finally over, Takuya went back inside to look for his mother, only to find that she had taken flight without wings. Takuya couldn't understand why, and so he returned once more to the checkpoint. This time, Takuya pulled his mother away from that filthy man Video and told her everything about the scumbag's plan, how he had done it all just to get her body. But Takuya had no evidence. His stepmother said he couldn't understand that everything she did, she had her reasons for, and even if she explained, he still wouldn't understand. Exhausted, she jumped into the street and let the truck hit her. Unwilling to accept this reality, Takuya kept going back in time to save his mother at all costs. However, no matter how many times, no matter what method or trick he used, the outcome was always the same: his stepmother would die. Watching her die again and again, Takuya became overwhelmed with helplessness. He turned to the book on parallel worlds for answers. In it, there was a theory called the Schwarzschild event radius. The explanation was very long, but to make it easier to understand, if you've watched the Loki series, there's a concept called a canon event. A canon event is one that must happen in the official timeline and cannot be changed, no matter how much intervention or alteration occurs. These are critical events without which the entire story or universe would no longer make sense or be able to continue. In short, the death of Takuya's mother was something that had to happen. Reading this theory in the book filled him with rage. He couldn't accept that reality. He then took her green access card, returned to the checkpoint, and met with Kaori. Without letting her say a word, he immediately handed her the green card. At the hotel, he agreed to exchange the card on the condition that she give him information about that trash named Video or Hideo or whatever to learn what that guy's real objective was, and why his mother had wanted to 4-4. Kaori then gave Takuya some information that truly shocked him. With this information in hand, Takuya returned again to the checkpoint, went home, and began to expose the scum worse than garbage, Hideo, from how he staged the incident with the two fake gangsters. Hideo demanded evidence, but after so many failed attempts to save his mother, Takuya had become wiser. He threw out a stack of photos Kaori had taken, showing Hideo dealing with the Yakuza. With no way to deny it, Hideo panicked and ran. Takuya gave chase, swearing to throw that bastard in jail so the black guys inside could teach him a lesson. But the coward ran too fast and Takuya couldn't catch up. Fortunately, Kaori was hiding in the bushes nearby and smacked the pervert's head with a flower pot. Takuya told Kaori everything about what the scumbag had done and left him to her to handle, while he rushed back home to see if his mother was about to try flying again. Thankfully, this time she wasn't flying, she was about to practice swimming in the bathroom. Takuya ran in to stop her. He lunged forward to prevent her from doing it, but she still insisted on ending her life. Takuya gave her a slap to bring her to her senses. He tried to persuade her even if he couldn't yet understand her suffering. He would try, so she mustn't do anything foolish. She was the only family he had left. In the middle of the argument, sometimes his stepmother referred to herself by name instead of calling herself mother. Once she calmed down, Takuya promised to help prove her innocence no matter how many timelines he had to go through. He would save her in every universe. The next day, Takuya saw his mother off to work before heading to summer school. There, Eriko threw a huge pile of homework at him that had accumulated due to his constant truancy. If he didn't finish it, he could say goodbye to this summer. Suddenly, the Pa called for Takuya to meet someone. Overjoyed, he dumped the homework on Yuuki and left. This time, the one waiting for him was Kaori. Regarding the situation with Video, she had used her connections to get him kicked out of Geotech. Her people would transfer him elsewhere and fire him in a few days. Even though Takuya was still frustrated that he couldn't get the guy thrown in jail, Kaori did have a plan to ensure his mother would never have to see him again. Takuya wanted to know what Kaori's purpose was in using the green card to access the restricted area of the research facility. Kaori told him that if he wanted to know, then he should become her partner. That night, they began their plan to sneak into the research facility. Security was extremely tight, so Takuya would have to enter through the back door, while she, being a reporter, could enter through the main entrance and then unlock the back door for him. They successfully broke into the facility. At that moment, everyone inside was in a meeting to decide on the disciplinary measures against Takuya's mother. If they could get past this door, Kaori would help him prove that his mother was innocent. Just to be safe, Takuya saved a checkpoint here. However, they couldn't enter yet. They needed to change the light to green first. Kaori then went to the control room to check. In the security room, when a girl who had helped Takuya before saw him at the door, she opened it for him. Inside were many types of stones. Kaori explained that the real objective of geotechnics was to excavate these stones. What for, he would soon find out. As they went deeper, Takuya saw a new type of glowing mineral. His mother had named it Psychite. It was something his father had been deeply interested in. The stone was first excavated beneath the Triangle Mountain. It had an unusual property. It reacted with the human mind and generated tremendous energy. Some people even considered it a living mineral. However, it had one weakness: the stones outside had very weak molecular bonds. Just by being exposed to air, their properties would change. That's why the stone had to be crystallized like this. The Psychite stone was the only sample, and this was also what his stepmother had been researching: its crystallization. Video's true goal was to frame his mother for leaking confidential data while using the opportunity to steal the stone. Now, their plan was to make it look like the stone was stolen and frame that bastard instead. For his mother's sake, Takuya resolutely destroyed the containment chamber. Alarms began to blare, and Takuya thought they had succeeded when suddenly, Kaori revealed her true colors and attacked him. Video appeared. Turns out the two of them had been working together all along, scheming to dump all the blame onto Takuya. But surprise! Takuya's intuition had never been wrong. He immediately jumped back to the checkpoint. However, even after jumping back, he still hadn't figured out how to deal with the two of them. This time, he followed the same plan as before, deliberately letting himself get hit so he could ask why they were targeting him and his mother. Naturally, it was because his mother was already mired in scandal, and now with a son accused of theft, she'd be finished. Kaori was a capitalist spy. She extorted companies for profit and then exposed them in the media. And her employer turned out to be someone from Takuya's own school. After saying all this, the two quickly left before things got worse. However, Takuya told them both they were too naive. As he spoke, he raised a salute, but in fact, it was a radio he had swiped from a guard who had fallen asleep. And guess what? Everything they had confessed was transmitted and recorded. The two were soon arrested. Thanks to Takuya, his mother was able to continue her research. It was Takuya's father who had asked her to study how to crystallize Psychite. Its glow vanished upon contact with air. His father had been deeply devoted to the stone and had written extensively about it in his journal. After examining it, his mother confirmed that Takuya's father had still loved his biological mother dearly. That was why he had studied the stone. Suddenly, Takuya began to experience interference. His stepmother was not surprised and said that perhaps it was time for Takuya to go. In his father's notebook, there was mention of parallel worlds. She didn't know which world he came from, but she hoped that Takuya would return to where he truly belonged. And just like that, Takuya disappeared. He met his father, who told him that karma is absolute, that this was the correction of chaos. It seemed that he had not been accepted to remain there, and he would be returned to the starting point to begin everything again with a few changes. Why did he know this? Because he resided beside the Vrinda tree, which governed all events of the past, present, and future. As one final reminder, he said that karma governed all things in life, and if Takuya wanted to uncover its secrets, he would have to explore history. Time rewound to the moment when Takuya had a gun pointed at him by Mr. Ryuzaji and was transported away. He returned home and slept through the night. He woke up at 8:39 am on July 26, 1994, 5 minutes off from the first time. This was the beginning of the summer vacation. Takuya went to school to check in, where Mr. Ryuzaji was still talking about an overnight meeting. Takuya stopped by the infirmary to look for Miss Eriko, but only Kana was there. Sure enough, the necklace Kana was wearing looked very familiar. After that, Kana left first, and while waiting for Miss Eriko, Takuya found her clothes there. Just as he picked them up to look at them, Mio walked in and immediately called him a pervert. Takuya handed Eriko's clothes over to Mio and left. This time, he met Mitsuki, who took him up to the rooftop and talked again about how Mr. Ruo had changed from someone who disliked smoking to someone who was now addicted. Even the teacher's mother had told her that her son had changed. Takuya also mentioned that the teacher had been meeting with some outsiders, first the reporter Kaori, and another was the detective he had hired. Takuya also remembered that in a conversation between his mother and the teacher had mentioned the third victim's curse. Takuya said he'd be dropping by the teacher's house later to deliver some research documents, and that he'd look around to see if anything was suspicious and report back to Mitsuki. Afterwards, Takuya and Yuuki used all their knowledge to finish their homework. Once done, they prepared to head to the teacher's house. Mio also wanted to come along. Takuya invited Kana too, but she declined because she smelled something that wasn't human coming from Mr. Ruo. On the way there, the three of them realized they were being watched. Upon arriving at the teacher's residence, an old woman came out to greet them. Yuuki felt an ominous atmosphere inside. He noticed an old storehouse, and according to the old woman, the mansion had been built 400 years ago and renovated since, but it still looked run down, as if the storehouse had returned from the past. They later learned that the old woman was the teacher's mother. Before they entered, she warned them that her son, Mr. Ruo, was no longer her son. He had changed. Then they met Mr. Ruo. The place was large, but oddly empty due to the lack of furniture. The teacher said he had thrown out anything unrelated to research. He then showed them a 4-year tapestry that depicted people being burned by sunlight, with a building in the background that resembled European-style churches. This further supported Takuya's father's hypothesis. In truth, the teacher said he didn't like it much, but Takuya's father had been fascinated by it, so he kept it because his father had an extraordinary intuition. Mio and Yuuki stayed to draw the tapestry while Takuya went outside to talk privately with the teacher. Takuya asked what kind of research his father and the teacher had been doing. The teacher said it had been a long journey. Kodai, Takuya's father, and he were former classmates who both had the same goal: to uncover the hidden elements of history that were never written down in books. Over time, Kodai had been expelled from the academic community. The teacher was still impressed by Kodai's 400-year cycle theory. He invited Kodai to his research institute, and Kodai chose Triangle Mountain as the location to study both the 400-year cycle theory and an ancient people called the Takunomahara. Then Kodai met physicist Yurika. The three of them had passionate debates. Yurika pursued a unified theory based on quantum mechanics. The teacher focused on human nature, and Kodai chose immortality as his subject of study. The role of researchers, the teacher said, is to hypothesize about inexplicable phenomena and then prove those hypotheses. Returning to the topic Takuya had asked about, back when they worked together, Professor Yurika's research notes mentioned a blind woman living in seclusion near Ken no Misaki. She had golden hair and snow-white skin. Her name was Keisha. which was later changed to Keiko. In other words, she was Takuya's mother. Through his research, Kodai grew close to Keiko, and Takuya was the result of their union. Although she was blind, she greatly supported Kodai's research. When he was little and often had fevers, she always took care of him. Then the teacher asked Takuya if his father had entrusted anything to him. Suddenly, the teacher's eyes glowed, stunning Takuya. The teacher believed that Takuya had received something and demanded he hand it over. As Takuya was about to lose consciousness, he desperately used his device, and luckily, Mio and Yuuki entered just in time, causing the teacher to stop. The three of them then left. Later, they met the teacher's mother again. She said that sparrows and swallows could never understand the thoughts of geese and swans. She asked the three of them to reflect on that statement. That night, Mio actually tried to look into what Mr. Ryu's mother had said, but ended up finding nothing. She sighed and recalled the moment when she caught Takuya and Mitsuki making love. Suddenly, a book on the table fell, and to her surprise, Mio discovered that the lightning strike incident at Ken no Misaki looked very similar to the church depicted on the tapestry at the teacher's house. She intended to tell Takuya about it, but the next day, her father informed her that she would be studying abroad in the US to avoid the recent scandals, and she would be leaving starting next week. Meanwhile, Takuya met Miss Ariko again on his way to school, his head still ringing from Mr. Ryu's double hypnosis move. Takuya wanted to skip school that day, but Miss Ariko promised to make him feel more relaxed if he came, and seeing the offer as too good to pass up, Takuya dragged her to the infirmary. Unfortunately, there were no massage services, just some tools she found in the storage room. Takuya asked her if she knew anything about Nai Herb or Al-Hab. She said Nai Herb was a type of hypnosis, but different from the usual kind. It allowed Takuya to remain conscious and aware even while under hypnosis. Later, Kona came to the infirmary to rest. After receiving a special massage, Takuya went up to the rooftop and met Mitsuki again. He recalled that she also had headaches like him, so she might have been hypnotized by Mr. Ryu. He asked if she was okay, and she said she was fine. In their conversation, we learned that Takuya had slept with Mitsuki, and after they were found out, Mio started to hate him. In any case, Takuya said that if Mr. Ryu did anything strange, he would report it to her. Just as Takuya returned to class, Mio told him and Yuuki about the similarities between the two mountains and the church on the tapestry in Mr. Ryu's house. She said the three of them would return to Triangle Mountain to investigate. She wanted to uncover the mystery within the week, but didn't mention to Takuya or Yuuki that she would be leaving soon. Then class started. The test this time was different from before. Miss Eriko said they had to get all answers right before they could leave. If they got any wrong, they would have to do it over and over until they finished it correctly. Clearly, this was aimed at someone who always skipped class like Takuya. But surprise, he finished it in one go, not because he was smart, but because he used the artifact to return to the checkpoint. Takuya and Mio finished and left first, while Yuuki had to stay behind to complete the test. The two of them went to Mio's house to gather information. Mio brought out a book written by Takuya's father, Legacy, introducing the Takanomahara people. However, the book did not mention the specific location of the tribe. Reading carefully, there was a clue pointing to Triangle Mountain. The writings on the two stones there were 8,000 years old, and Mio guessed they were written by the Takanomahara. In short, she was certain that there was something at Triangle Mountain. As she prepared to head out, her father suddenly came to check in. Takuya, in a hurry, called for Mio and accidentally saw her naked. Her scream agitated her father outside, who also heard a boy's voice. Mio's father then ran to get his gun. Inside, she shouted for Takuya to run before her father gave him a lead sandwich. At that moment, her father had already loaded the gun, but luckily the doorbell rang, forcing him to go downstairs. Takuya took the chance to escape. The visitor was Yuuki. As soon as he opened the door, Mio's father pointed the gun at his head to chase him away. After that, Takuya and Mio went up to Triangle Mountain and found the two stones. She believed that if the mountain really was the church in the tapestry, there must be an entrance somewhere, so the two split up to search. Later, Mio found an area that looked different from the rest, and just as she tried to dig deeper, she fell and sprained her ankle. Takuya told her not to overdo it and carried her back. He brought Mio to the school infirmary for first aid, and then she told him that her father was involved in a corruption scandal related to the geotechnics construction project and that she would be leaving Sakamachi. Right at the climax of their conversation, Mitsuki walked in, and a love triangle drama began. Mitsuki and Mio started arguing. Mitsuki even knew that Mio was in love with Takuya. The more Mio denied it, the more it showed on her face. Pausing the drama there, Mitsuki told Takuya to take Mio home, and coincidentally, their conversation was overheard by Yuuki. The very next day, as Takuya was walking, Mio suddenly scolded him as a terrible person. Confused about what had happened, he went to where a crowd was gathering and discovered a petition accusing Mio's father, the mayor, of corruption. Takuya quickly dispersed the crowd and examined the accusation letter, but people claimed he was violating freedom of speech. However, freedom of speech only applies to those who are willing to take responsibility for what they say. Posting anonymously was no better than being a coward. Takuya then dispersed the crowd. Meanwhile, Mio's father was also being surrounded by reporters, and Mio herself was being subjected to gossip at school. She went to the research room and met Yuuki again. He had heard about the incident and told her she could rely on him. Takuya entered from outside, wanting to explain things to Mio, but she ignored him and walked away. Takuya began to suspect Yuuki, but he wasn't sure yet. He went to the rooftop and recounted everything to Mitsuki, though she couldn't do much to help him. As for Mio, the media was still swarming her house, but in her room, she was preparing to head to the mountain once again. She wrote a letter to her father and left. Meanwhile, Takuya, on his way to the infirmary, encountered Yuuki going somewhere. At the infirmary, Kana had a fever and was being taken care of by Miss Ariko. Upon seeing Takuya, Kana quickly left. Takuya and Miss Ariko talked about the anonymous person who leaked the information. On TV, it was announced that Mio's father had resigned as mayor and the city council had issued a directive to pull all support from the geotech project. Back home, Takuya looked for Mio's phone number intending to call her, but his phone rang first. It was his stepmother. She said she would be late due to some issues with the sponsors, and that the issue with the families of the lightning victims had been settled. She also confirmed that in this timeline, she had no ties to Mio's father. However, she told Takuya to look after Mio. She hadn't done anything wrong, and the sins of the parents shouldn't be passed on to their children. She asked him to help Mio if he could. Taking her words to heart, Takuya decided not to call but to go to Mio's house in person. There, he met the journalist Kaori, who tried to extract information about Mio from him, again using the same old trick. If you give me something, I can help you. Takuya didn't want to answer, but suddenly Yuuki arrived and told him that Mio had run away from home. He heard it from the servants and also found her letter. Thinking she couldn't have gone far, the two of them split up to search. Takuya was looking at school when he ran into Mitsuki. After learning what happened, she agreed to help. Just after Takuya left, Mitsuki experienced another headache but recovered quickly and went searching for Mio as well. While searching on the beach, Takuya ran into Kana and asked her about Mio. She told him Mio was somewhere dangerous Triangle Mountain. Takuya rushed back to inform Yuuki and Mitsuki, and they quickly packed up and went there. Sure enough, they found a cave Mio had dug next to the two stone slabs. They needed to find her before sunrise. Otherwise, the police would intervene and things would get complicated. Takuya planned to go in with Mitsuki and told Yuuki to keep watch outside, but Yuuki insisted on going in too. After a bit of arguing, he finally admitted that he was the one who had reported Mio's father. He deeply regretted what he had done and needed to see Mio to apologize. He loved her very much and had done it out of jealousy. Takuya, furious, punched him in the mouth, then told Yuuki he had to apologize to Mio when they found her. Takuya and Yuuki would go inside, and Mitsuki would contact the police if they weren't out by morning. Before entering, Takuya saved a checkpoint, and then they proceeded inside. Surprisingly, Mio alone had managed to dig such a massive tunnel. Takuya even discovered an underground water vein. Going deeper in, the two of them found a door, and after fiddling with it for a while, they managed to open it. Inside, they found a vast area with even a skeleton. Looking carefully around, Yuuki felt it was all very familiar. This was the underground base of the demon god Gelji, a powerful leader of a malevolent organization who once enslaved innocent people and forced them into labor. It sounded ridiculous, but they couldn't rule out the possibility. The area contained bones and pickaxes, suggesting it was once both a prison and a mine. The remaining clothing designs were also very ancient. Continuing on, they found a hole in the wall, revealing a hidden passage. Inside, there were also corpses, apparently prisoners, with inscriptions beside the skeletons similar to those on the two stone slabs. Nearby was Mio's backpack. Perhaps she had stopped here to write something and then got lost. Worried, Yuuki panicked and rushed deeper inside, only to fall into a trap. Takuya chased after him and climbed down, only to find Yuuki mortally wounded by the trap. Even in that state, Yuuki told Takuya to find Mio and apologize on his behalf. Takuya tried first aid, but it was too late. Yuuki died just like that. Unable to let his friend die like this, Takuya returned to the checkpoint. This time, he left Yuuki outside. Someone so useless would only get in the way. Then he and Mitsuki went in. This time, Takuya led her to where Mio's backpack was. As soon as he picked it up, a small tremor occurred and both of them fell into a pit. Luckily, neither of them was injured. Shining their flashlights around, they found another skeleton that appeared more recent than the others. Next to it was a journal. Surprisingly, it belonged to Dr. Yurika, who had once conducted research with Takuya's father. Inside were incomprehensible notes about fear and impending visions that were pressing down on Yurika. The key to unlocking the greatest mystery in history lay within Triangle Mountain. These ruins had existed for millennia. Yurika regretted not bringing the whole team. These ruins were unlike any known civilization in history. She believed this was the result of an intersection between two dimensions beyond the boundary of reality. According to Takuya's father's theory, such dimensional overlaps occurred once every 400 years. For example, the Takenomahara people came from a different timeline and had once overlapped with Japan, bringing in a new culture. Yurika had studied the electromagnetic fields and gravity around Sakamachi City, leading to the conclusion that such an overlap had indeed happened in the past. She hadn't yet discovered the cause, but instead found her own death before the answer. She had pushed herself to the limit, but her passion for understanding still burned inside her. It reminded her of a moment, the moment when Takuya's father gave her something, the moment she held it in her hands and later named it the reflector device. Suddenly, the flashlight went out, and Mitsuki began acting strangely after learning that Takuya possessed the artifact. As if hypnotized, she pulled out Professor Ryu's pistol and threatened Takuya to hand it over. Mitsuki tried to regain control of herself but failed. Takuya ran away before eventually going to see his father. He fled deeper inside and found an ancient coffin. He took a gamble and hid inside, but it didn't seem to be a good idea. Mitsuki was closing in. Suddenly, the coffin collapsed, dropping Takuya into a glowing underground lake. Fortunately, Mio pulled him up in time. Takuya was relieved to see she was safe. He was amazed by the glowing lake, but Mio said it wasn't the water that glowed, but the rocks beneath it. Takuya randomly guessed that it might be Psychite ore down there. The two of them began searching for a way out. Mio had also read Dr. Yurika's journal. If her theory about multiple timelines was true, it would explain why the civilizations here didn't exist in Japan's historical records. Another tremor struck. A large rock fell, and Mio quickly dodged it, but ended up falling into the water and getting completely soaked. The two then lit a fire. Takuya wanted Mio to rest while he searched for the exit, but she asked him to stay with her. She didn't want to be alone. They talked about everything that had happened. Takuya admitted he was the one who reported her father, but Mio already knew it was Yuuki. There was no point blaming him now. Mio then asked Takuya to kiss her because she wanted this to be her most beautiful memory before dying. Takuya kissed her on the forehead and promised they would get out together. He fed her and let her rest. As he sat there, he debated whether to turn back time, but then again, he didn't know the way and couldn't be sure he'd find Mio again. Takuya decided to rest a bit before figuring out what to do next. At that moment, someone called his name. He opened his eyes and saw his mother, who told him to help the person he loved before she disappeared. Waking up after the dream visitation from his mother, Takuya woke Mio and told her about it. Then the two of them headed to the waterfall where his mother had stood in the middle of the lake. When he shined his flashlight, something inside sparkled and reflected light. Takuya went in to check and discovered a gem. At this point, he decided to tell Mio the truth. If she had read Dr. Eureka's notebook, then she would know about the reflector device, and Takuya revealed that he was currently holding it. Mio was surprised and deeply saddened, because if Takuya used it to return to the checkpoint, the kiss they just shared would never have happened. Takuya reassured her and promised to get her out of there, as there was a path behind the waterfall. Outside, Yuuki was still worried about everyone. Just as he was about to call the police, Kana appeared. After hearing the story from Yuuki, Kana was disappointed that no one had listened to her warnings. If the two of them had reached that place, it would mean certain death. Meanwhile, inside, Takuya and Mio continued following the path. They heard a sound and tracked it to a ruined room. On the ground was a book, but the moment they picked it up, it crumbled. Perhaps this place really was 8,000 years old. Takuya casually picked up a sword nearby just in case something bad happened. They continued following the sound, which now clearly came from some sort of machinery. They discovered a stone door, which Takuya pried open using the sword. Inside was a massive ancient machine stretching for hundreds of meters. According to Mio's estimate, it had been here for at least a century. Outside, Kana was desperately trying to stop the machine from activating, warning that if it did, many lives would be lost. Inside the mountain, Takuya and Mio encountered Mitsuki again. From her explanation, this tower was a lightning generator, meaning that outside, where it was currently sunny and geotech had begun excavation and transport. Trying to extract psychite from the area would activate the machine and unleash lightning. That was the meaning behind the light that scorched people on the tapestry. Mitsuki had long known about the device's existence, but never knew how to get inside. Luckily, thanks to Takuya and Mio, she finally found a way. Mitsuki demanded that Takuya hand over the artifact. The machine began to activate, firing bolts of lightning and causing earthquakes within the cave. Takuya tried to bring Mitsuki back to her senses. After struggling internally, she managed to regain control. However, she was still bound to obey Professor Ryu's orders. Not wanting to harm either of them, she took her own life and was crushed by falling rocks. While Takuya was still in shock, Mio urged him to use the artifact to return to the last save point. She didn't want Mitsuki to die as a puppet. She wanted to save her. But Takuya still refused to go back right away. He had to get Mio out of there first, then return to the checkpoint. He used the sword to destroy the machine and pulled Mio away. They found a place like the bottom of a well, and unexpectedly, Kana and Yuuki were above, lowering a rope to rescue them. Even more surprising was that the place they were now in was Professor Ryu's mansion. When Takuya asked how they knew, Kana simply said someone tipped her off. Yuuki then apologized to Mio, admitting his mistakes, and she forgave him. At that moment, Takuya became disoriented again. This timeline didn't seem to accept him either. Kana was also aware of chaotic timeline corrections. Even though Mitsuki couldn't be saved in this timeline, Takuya promised Mio he would save her in another one. After saying that, Takuya vanished again. He then met his father once more. Takuya demanded answers. What exactly was that device? And what was that bastard Ryuzoji really after? His father told him to use his brain. He had planned to write down everything about Ryuzoji, but midway through, He realized that Ryuzaji might not even be human, he could be something else entirely. And Takuya would eventually understand. On his third appearance in this timeline, after being transported, Takuya didn't go home to sleep right away. Instead, he went to a public phone booth and called Mitsuki. Confirming that she was safe, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, he had made up his mind his goal was to save Mitsuki and uncover Ryusoji's true objective. The next day, July 26, 1994, Takuya called Yuuki to ask if he knew anything about Professor Ryu. Through their conversation, Takuya managed to gather some information. First of all, the old man was extremely obsessed with curses, and the time he moved into that large mansion coincided with the rumors of a curse at that place. Takuya was also quite reluctant to confront him directly, especially if the old man decided to use that hypnosis trick again. He remembered that Eriko had some knowledge about it, so he went to ask her. He went to the infirmary to look for her, but there was no one there except for her clothes. Takuya rushed over and sniffed them. They were still warm, meaning she had just taken them off. He looked around and found her sleeping under the bed. It reminded him of how Ryu also used to sleep on the floor. While she was sleeping, Eriko kept muttering that it was hot and mentioned the name Abel, begging him not to leave her. Worried, Takuya called out to her to wake her up. Eriko mistook him for Abel and immediately hugged him. A little while later, when she finally regained consciousness, she screamed. Mio and Yuki, hearing the noise, rushed in and found the two of them in a disheveled state. At that point, even if he jumped into the Yellow River 10 times, it wouldn't wash away his guilt. Mio scolded him severely, even though Eriko had explained that it was a misunderstanding. Elsewhere, Kaori was supposedly interviewing Ryu, but in reality, he needed her to retrieve something he would do anything to obtain. Back in the infirmary, Takuya asked Yuki what he was holding, and Yuki introduced it as a compilation of everything related to curses. It sounded interesting, so they all watched it together. Throughout the video, there was nothing particularly special, but one thing stood out: all the curses originated from Ryu's house, though this wasn't explicitly mentioned. However, Yuki had many more tapes, so they planned to watch them gradually. While they were watching, Mitsuki came to find Takuya, and the two of them went up to the rooftop to talk once again. It was about how Mr. Ryu had changed. Takuya asked Mitsuki if she experienced headaches whenever she was around him, and she confirmed that she did. That meant there was a possibility Ryu had used Nairb on her. Takuya asked when Ryu started acting strangely, and found out it was 2 months ago, the same time the curse began to spread. Mitsuki then left because she had something to do with Ryu. Takuya pretended to leave, but actually followed the two of them to the research lab. He went in first to find a hiding spot, and by coincidence, Eriko was also hiding there. Together, they eavesdropped on the conversation between Mitsuki and Ryu. Mitsuki directly told Ryu that he had changed, but he started manipulating her in return, insisting that he hadn't changed and that it was she who had. He kept twisting her thoughts and then kissed her. Takuya couldn't see clearly, so he tried to lean forward. Eriko, having witnessed everything, told Takuya to forget about Mitsuki because she would soon disappear. After the two of them left, Takuya and Eriko came out as well. She told him to meet her at a cafe after school and then left. That afternoon, after school, Takuya ran into Kana. Nearby, Ryu and Mitsuki had just walked away. Kana said Ryu was very cunning and was trying to steal her necklace. Afterward, Takuya went to the cafe. While waiting, he happened to spot Ryu and Kaori from the newspaper together. Eriko also appeared in disguise. The two of them exchanged some information, and Eriko became suspicious of Takuya because he seemed to know quite a lot, as if everything was repeating itself. They then went to check out Ryu's mansion. Eriko rushed inside. Ryu's mother said she would give her some information about him. The old woman looked senile, but in truth, she was pretending in order not to be targeted. She had likely discovered the principal's secret. The two of them went to an old storage shed and ventured deep inside. There, they made a horrifying discovery: Ryu's mother had been murdered. Hearing the sound of a car, they realized the culprit hadn't gone far. Eriko rushed out to chase them, and suddenly the person drove the car straight into a utility pole. Shockingly, it turned out to be Mitsuki. The two of them quickly took her back to the school for treatment. After giving her first aid, Eriko returned to the shed to handle the body. Takuya asked her why she was investigating Ryu. but she only said that he would soon find out. This might be the difference compared to the other parallel worlds. A little while later, Mitsuki regained consciousness. Takuya didn't tell her the truth and only said she had been in a car accident. However, while he went to get her medicine, she suddenly attacked him. It seemed Mitsuki was still under hypnosis. Before being knocked out, Takuya managed to save a checkpoint. When he regained consciousness, he found himself tied up, and in front of him were Ryu and Mitsuki. Things got even worse when Eriko was also attacked. Through Ryu's conversation, Takuya learned that Eriko and Ryu had known each other before. Ryu had thought he would be safe after Abel died, but who would have expected Eriko to continue hunting him? Having obtained some useful information, Takuya returned to the previous checkpoint. This time, while dodging, he also tried to persuade Mitsuki, but failed. Fortunately, Eriko heard the noise and came back, subduing Mitsuki and knocking her out. Takuya no longer hid the truth and told her that he came from another timeline. Eriko replied that this confirmed they were on the right route. She then took Takuya back to the old storage shed and told him to destroy a certain wall. When he broke it open, inside were human bones. Takuya still didn't know whose they were. Eriko told him to try and remember. In the original timeline, there had been a strange serial murder case in the city. Eriko added that the monster seen during the uproar about the curse, it was Abel's body containing the soul of Principal Ruzoji. Currently, Ruzoji's body was being possessed by something else. For interdimensional eternal criminals, it was possible they were entities of pure concept capable of traveling between different dimensions and interfering with events. Takuya had gone through enough to believe this was true. Eriko's purpose was to track down Ryu and capture him. Takuya asked who she really was. She told him that in the future, there was a man named Abel, a scientist who spent every day researching together with his assistant. They discovered the Vrinda tree, a diagram showing that all potential events could stem from a single cause. The nodes on the diagram branched out like a tree based on a set of rules. The result of one event would become the cause of a new one, leading to a new result, and in this way, parallel worlds were formed. Abel conducted an experiment. He wanted to search for the origin of all events. Despite warnings, he insisted on going. But during his search, he was attacked by an interdimensional eternal criminal. It took over his body and fled to the parallel world where Takuya and Eriko now were. Eventually, it moved from Abel's body to Ruzoji's. Even though Abel's body had decomposed, his soul still wandered in the event space. Entering the mansion, Eriko led Takuya through a secret passage behind a rug. The deeper they went, the stronger the resonance from the artifact became. Eventually, they arrived at a device that allowed travel between dimensions. It resembled the artifact Takuya possessed. Judging by its condition, it had been damaged after arriving here. That was why Ryu had approached Takuya to take the artifact from him. At that moment, Ryu appeared as well, but he denied everything Eriko said as nonsense. There was no need to argue. With Abel's skeleton as evidence, Eriko had enough to convict him. She then geared up for battle. The two began shooting. Eriko aimed straight at Ryu's head, but he didn't die. For a pure conceptual entity, the body was only a vessel, but everything had limits. Eriko charged forward and shot Ryu's gun out of his hand, but she was also shot down by Mitsuki. While no one was paying attention to him, Takuya rushed out, grabbed a gun, and shot Ryu in the heart. Ryu fired back, but Mitsuki shielded Takuya and took the hit. Ryu quickly fled, and Eriko chased after him. Mitsuki was overjoyed that Takuya was safe. She truly loved him. Perhaps that was all she could say. Then she handed him the second gemstone before she passed away. Takuya wanted to go back to save Mitsuki, but Eriko said her death was a canon event and couldn't be changed. Even if she were saved this time, she would still die some other way. Now that they had uncovered Ryu's true objective, this timeline began rejecting Takuya. The only regret was that he couldn't save Mitsuki. Eriko said she would forcibly stabilize causality and adjust the chaos. As a precaution, she would erase Takuya's memory of her and Ryu because if Ryu discovered who he was, he would chase him across all worlds. Takuya met his father again. Causality guided everything. The one who would lead him now would be Kana. And when all 8 gemstones were gathered, a new path would open. His father would be waiting for him there. Takuya continued his journey with the 7 gemstones stored in the artifact. On July 26, 1994, he went to meet Kana. According to his father's account, Takuya's history had already been engraved on the Vrinda tree. Shaping history meant traversing countless possibilities. Every action he took carried meaning. Every event bound by causal laws corresponded to its own set of event rules, all flowing like the current of a river. Even time itself could not break this rule. That was what his father believed until he learned of their existence. With little time left, he wanted to see Takuya again as soon as possible. That moment had already been determined by the weight of events, the momentum of causal rules. If the word causality didn't sound poetic enough, then he could consider it fate. Returning to school, Takuya began approaching Kana to get to know her, as they weren't close yet. After class, he kept following her around, asking about her interests. As usual, Kana went to the infirmary to find Eriko because she was running a high fever again, but Eriko wasn't there, and Kana was extremely exhausted. With no other option, Takuya laid her down on the bed first. Because her body was drenched in sweat, Takuya had to undress her to wipe her off. While doing so, he noticed a very familiar bracelet. Later, when Kana woke up, Takuya had already finished. Eriko also returned at that moment, and coincidentally, she had something to discuss with both of them. In the research club room, Mio asked Yuki if he knew anything about Kana out of curiosity, but he didn't. However, someone in the kendo club had also transferred from Kana's old school, so Yuki said he'd try asking that person about her when he had the chance. At that moment, Takuya also came to the clubroom and even brought Kana along to join the history research club. Kana looked over the model that Mio and Yuki had made. Though it was very detailed, she pointed out that it didn't match reality. Mio insisted she had followed the photo exactly, but Kana said that photo was from 10 years ago. The Triangle Island had undergone numerous tremors and erosion, so it had inevitably changed. To prevent the two girls from continuing to argue, Takuya suggested they go there to take new photos. After gathering all the necessary materials, everyone headed back. Yuki would take Mio home, while Takuya took Kana. When they reached her apartment, Takuya learned she lived alone. Suddenly, a drunken man approached and tried to hit on Takuya. From the way he spoke, it was probably not the first time he had come around. Annoyed and disgusted, Takuya was about to punch him, but Kana pulled him inside. Just as they reached her apartment door, Kana collapsed from exhaustion. He brought her inside. Her home was fairly simple, and Takuya noticed that she had bought a lot of alcohol. After Kana's fever subsided, she went to take a bath. While Takuya was preparing her clothes, he accidentally discovered that his father had sent her money transferred before he disappeared. Realizing that she knew quite a lot, such as about parallel worlds or chaos correction, Takuya confronted her. Kana admitted that she knew, but said she couldn't tell him everything yet. When the time came, she would explain. As it was late, Takuya asked to leave. However, at the gate, he encountered the pervert from earlier again. Worried about Kana, Takuya decided to stay the night with her. In the darkness, he asked Kana whether his father was still alive. Kana answered yes. In the past, Takuya had argued with his father when he remarried his stepmother. His father also told him about his birth mother Keiko had died. That was a truth carved into history. But not all truths were correct. History was not simply a record of past events. Before he could hear everything his father had to say, Takuya woke up. Kana had already prepared breakfast for him. After eating, they went to school. At the club, since the model was already completed, everyone felt a bit bored. Takuya wanted to go to the beach, but the geotech construction project blocked access, so they couldn't go. With no other choice, Mio said her family owned a private beach, and if they wanted, she could ask her father to let them go there. Takuya invited Kana too. At first, she declined due to her weak body, but eventually, the three persuaded her. The next day, the group set off for Mio's beach. While waiting at the transfer station for the next train, they saw the same pervert tailing Kana again. Takuya came up with a plan to shake him off. He then went into the restroom, luring the man to follow him inside. While walking, the man said he knew how Takuya could meet his father, but Takuya didn't care and ran off. The man hurriedly chased after him. Upon seeing Kana on the train, he immediately followed her on board only to realize too late that it was a decoy. He had been tricked by the group and was now stuck on a train that would never stop. With that problem taken care of, the group continued on their journey. After a long trip, they finally arrived at Mio's family resort. Just in case the pervert tried to show up again, Takuya saved a checkpoint at the location. Then everyone changed into their beachwear. Since the beach scene was very steamy, I'll watch it on your behalf. All in all, they had a great time together. Kana gradually opened up to everyone. By evening, the group started grilling meat together. Suddenly, Kana noticed that her necklace, which she had taken off before swimming, had gone missing. Yuki also mentioned that the meat they were about to grill had vanished. When everyone went inside the house, they found everything in complete disarray. Takuya's artifact was also missing. Suspecting that the pervert had come here, Takuya and Yuki went to investigate. They followed a noise to the basement, but found only a stray dog. Maybe it was the culprit. The dog then ran wild throughout the house, knocking over a hot charcoal grill onto the fireworks before escaping. Their beach trip descended into total chaos. Yuki was especially upset about the ruined meat. Takuya considered reloading from the saved checkpoint, but decided against it, thinking that this kind of messy fun was part of youth. That night while sleeping, Yuki had a dream and mistook Takuya's private part for a sausage and bit it. The next day, everyone returned home. Takuya took Kana home while Yuki and Mio went their own way. On the way, Kana suddenly developed a high fever and collapsed. Takuya quickly brought her back to her apartment. Thankfully, he had some fever-reducing medicine from his mother with him. Once Kana felt better, Takuya turned off the lights to let her rest. He checked the transaction history of the money his father had sent to Kana and unexpectedly found a photo of her with her family. She was smiling brightly. What stood out was that the photo was taken at the site of the two boulders, yet there were 3 boulders visible behind Kana. Growing suspicious, the next day Takuya went to the research room to look into the history of the 2 boulders. It turned out that the 3rd boulder had been moved back in 1945. Takuya started forming a theory about someone who never aged. At that moment, Yuki returned after developing the photos taken on Triangle Island. He also mentioned seeing the pervert entering a shady-looking hotel. As it turned out, the guy had arranged to meet Kana there. She told him this would be the last time between them. The man assumed she was in love with Takuya and agreed to back off if she told him where Takuya's father was. Otherwise, he would make sure she could never attend school again. Just as the situation got intense, a nearby police officer interrupted, forcing the man to leave. Meanwhile, Takuya, while investigating the history of Triangle Island, was approached by Eriko. The two went to the infirmary to discuss Kana. Eriko said Kana's condition was very strange and asked Takuya to keep an eye on her. There was also something else. Kana's school record was highly unusual. She had transferred schools 20 times in a short span, all of which were close to the current city. That night, while on his way home, Takuya ran into the pervert again. The man wanted to strike a deal with Takuya and introduced himself as Hojo, a detective. He had been hired to find the location of Takuya's father, and he knew Kana had that information. All Takuya had to do was help extract it from her. Naturally, Takuya disliked the man from the start and refused. The next day, Kana came to Takuya's house to thank him for helping with her fever. They went to a park and talked. At that time, Takuya brought up a suspicion that the girl he saw when he was young was actually Kana. Before she could answer, a dog suddenly approached them. Kana said that sometimes she wished she were a dog so she wouldn't have to deal with anger, worries, sadness, or loneliness. She had endured too much betrayal and hatred. Wanting to understand her more, Takuya offered to be her friend, but she only said he was cruel, then left. Takuya headed home and ran into Hojo again on the way. Hojo brought up the deal from the day before. Now all Takuya had to do was plant a listening device in Kana's room. Enraged, Takuya smashed the device and walked away. That night, it was revealed that the one who had hired the detective was Old Man Ryu. The detective begged for more time to extract information from Kana, but Ryu told him that someone else he had hired was doing quite well. Then, Ryu hypnotized the detective to make him do something. The next day, the entire school was abuzz with rumors that Kana was a prostitute. Takuya was shocked when he heard this. Perhaps this was the reason Kana kept having to transfer schools. Kana said that there was no place for her in this world, not even with Miss Eriko. As for Takuya, he tore up all the slanderous papers. Mio and Yuki also helped disperse the crowd. Takuya ran to the infirmary, where he learned that Kana had submitted a transfer request. However, all the schools were still within this city, more precisely, around Triangle Island. Eriko reasoned that Kana's secret might be deeply connected to Takuya's parents. Takuya immediately ran to find Kana. He went to her apartment and told her everything, that the girl he had seen when he was young was definitely her, and that she had to keep transferring schools because of her immortality. She had to move constantly so no one would find out she never aged. Takuya wasn't there just to say that he wanted to understand more about who Kana really was, because when he was with her, he felt like he had a family, so he wanted to hear her true feelings. A warning: what you're about to hear may not be suitable for everyone, so please consider that before continuing. In the past, Kana only had her mother as family. She never even knew her father's face. Because of her immortality, the two of them constantly had to move. Her mother worked as a prostitute, and in time, she passed away, leaving Kana completely alone. With no relatives or friends to guide her, Kana developed twisted views about people and society. Eventually, she followed the same path as her mother, selling her body to survive. Things only started to improve when she met Takuya's parents. They made her feel like she was part of a family. But then, they too disappeared, and Kana returned to her previous dark, lonely life. Takuya told her she wasn't alone anymore, she had him as a friend. But then she began undressing and asked him to hold her. Takuya hesitated, and Kana, fully aware of his reluctance, accused him of looking down on her and asked him to leave. Just then, the detective called again, threatening to kill both her and Takuya if she didn't come to the park that night. Takuya tried to stop her, but she told him that a hypocrite like him had no right to care about her. Silenced, Takuya had no choice but to leave. At school, Yuki asked about it, and Takuya told him Kana would be transferring, and that there was nothing he could do. Mio found it strange, was someone like Takuya really going to give up that easily? She reminded him of all the memories they had made together, and said she was sure Kana had no intention of leaving. Encouraged by Mio, Takuya regained his determination and went to find Kana. At that time, she was being interrogated by the detective for the location of Takuya's father. He even assaulted her. Fortunately, Takuya arrived in time, or unfortunately, as the detective pulled out a knife and threatened to kill Takuya in front of Kana. With no way out, Kana was forced to reveal everything. Takuya's father was still alive, but he was no longer in this world, he was in another space-time dimension. Takuya's father had once mentioned a place called De La Granto, which was Kana's mother's homeland. It existed in another dimension, but once every 400 years, when it drew close to Sakamachi, a few people would be transported into that dimension. That's how Kana's mother and Takuya's biological mother ended up here. Takuya's mother was no longer in this timeline. Before she left, she said, "You must begin the journey for the one who comes next." She left after giving Takuya's father an artifact from De La Granto. History never repeats, it only moves in one direction, but the flow of time is different. And so, Takuya's father left to find his wife. That was everything Kana knew. But the detective didn't believe such nonsense and moved to attack her, only to get a punch in the face from Takuya. Takuya told Kana not to belittle herself, and that she wasn't alone, she had him, Yuki, and Mio. Everyone was worried about her, so she was never alone. Kana seemed to find a small glimmer of hope in life, but the detective attacked Takuya again. During the struggle, Kana's pendant was knocked off and shattered. Takuya had to reload from a checkpoint before he dared to fight barehanded against the knife. After who knows how many resets, he finally defeated the detective. Miss Ariko also arrived to help, saying that since the detective was connected to Old Man Ryu, she would take him away to settle a few matters. As for Kana, she asked Takuya to take care of her. Kana was gradually losing strength because the pendant had shattered. Upon asking, it was revealed that inside the pendant was a psychite stone, the thing that allowed Kana to live in this world. It came from another dimension, and only stones from De La Granto had achieved perfect crystallization, those in this world had not. Kana might not be able to live any longer. Still, she was happy to know that there was someone who needed her, that she was no longer alone. Takuya promised to go to another world to find Psychite Stone to save her, but it might be too late. Kana repeated the final words of his father to Takuya. He then ran home, where his father told him that 8 jewels were needed to reach De La Granto, and the last one was still being researched by him. It was hidden behind the clock in his room. Once all 8 were collected, Takuya had to go to a cave beneath Triangle Mountain. The burial chamber at the end of the cave would be the key. Takuya placed all the jewels on the stone pedestal, and a light appeared that transported him. Once again, Takuya met his father, who said that without Psychite Stone, Kana could not survive, nor could his mother. His mother was now with him in a world that, philosophically speaking, was called Idea. Takuya promised to find them. His father gave him one final lesson before sending him off. That time had no meaning. Finally, Takuya arrived in a world called De La Granto. Now he was struggling just to survive, let alone find Psychite Stone. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed, and he was still trapped in this forest. He couldn't use the artifact, as it was the only thing that could return him to his original world. He had saved a checkpoint at the moment when Kana was on the verge of death. One day, while on patrol, Takuya came across a girl being attacked by a bat-faced demon. He rushed in to save her, but the girl couldn't speak or understand anything Takuya said. Still, the fact that there was another person gave him hope. He wrote out the alphabet and began reading each letter aloud. If the girl reacted, he would know. It wasn't until the afternoon that Takuya learned her name was Salis. She didn't know where he came from. Sakamachi or Psychite meant nothing to her. It turned out she was also lost. The two decided to travel together. They came out of the forest to see a desert before them. Takuya hesitated to cross, but Salis tugged on his shirt and pointed toward a house in the distance. With no other option, they headed there. They called out, but no one responded. Upon entering, it seemed like no one was inside. Yet the lack of dust on the furniture suggested someone still lived there. Takuya went further to check and was suddenly confronted by a girl pointing a sword at him. Thinking he was an enemy, she tried to attack but soon collapsed. Later, she woke up in bed. Once she knew they had no hostile intentions, she backed off. She introduced herself as Alia, a knight guarding the frontier under orders from the God Emperor. The frontier was the boundary separating De La Granto from the rest of the world, and Alia was tasked with eliminating the monsters that appeared there. Takuya asked her about Psychite Stone, but unfortunately, she had never heard of it, or perhaps it had a different name in this world. Alia had just defeated a bat-faced demon, and explained that monsters were appearing more frequently due to the wrath of Mother Earth, which occurred once every 400 years. The number 400 again made Takuya weary. To avoid calamities, every 5 years, the people here sacrificed a girl to the deity with divine power, known as divine energy. Some would lose their voice, some their ability to walk. Salis might be a shrine maiden. When they returned, Salis had prepared food for the two of them. Elsewhere, the God Emperor had received a report that the shrine maiden had escaped and immediately ordered a search. The next day, Takuya was trained by Alia here. Carelessness could easily lead to death. Alia explained that beyond the desert was the imperial capital, and there were gemstone mines scattered around the desert. That afternoon, while on patrol, the two encountered an injured monster. Alia was about to kill it, but another monster appeared to protect the wounded one. The sight made Alia hesitate, allowing Takuya to rush in and drive them away. Alia said that watching them protect each other reminded her of her younger sister, who had run away when she was little. Alia's illness was slowly draining her life away. The next day, Alia continued her patrol, while Takuya and Salis went into the forest to look for food. While he was fishing, she went to pick flowers. As she was doing so, a monster appeared and attacked her. Alia arrived just in time to save her after 2 slashes. The monster was dead, but her body had reached its limit. Salis had foreseen Alia's death, which was why she had picked flowers to honor her. Alia also knew that Salis was a shrine maiden. Before she died, Alia begged Salis to save this land from the wrath of Mother Earth. The two of them buried Alia alongside her fallen comrades. Alia had fulfilled her mission, so Takuya, too, had to save Kana. The next day, he prepared to set off in search of the gemstone mine in the desert. He told Salis to stay behind because she couldn't endure the desert heat. However, she still followed him. Takuya thought she would give up soon, so he ignored her. After walking for a while, Takuya stopped to rest and realized his water pouch had been punctured. With no other choice, he turned back to the house for more water, but Salis wasn't following him. Worried she had gotten lost, he rushed to find her. Salis was still wandering the desert, wondering if what her mother had told her was true. She collapsed from exhaustion. Just as she was falling into despair, Takuya found her. He tried to give her water, but she couldn't drink. With no other option, he gave her water mouth to mouth. Meeting him was her destiny. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. Takuya had taken over Alia's role of guarding the frontier from demons. A new life had also emerged here, the daughter of him and Salis, He and Salis lived a peaceful, simple life amidst the wilderness. However, he still held on to the promise he made to Kana, and every night he thought about returning. Over the year, to verify whether the mineral Alia had mentioned was psychite or not, he attempted many times to cross the desert, but surviving that harsh land was nearly impossible. Takuya was also now able to communicate with Salis through thoughts. No matter what, he promised to protect both mother and child. In the days that followed, Yuno grew incredibly fast, like a holy child. Within 3 months, she could walk. In 6 months, she could speak. And within a year, she was like a 4-year-old. By the time she turned 5, she looked like a 16-year-old girl. Yet she remained very attached to her father. Takuya thought she needed friends or comrades. This reminded him of his own friends. A sudden noise startled him, putting him on alert. When he went to investigate, he found an injured monster. It could speak. She was wounded and trying to protect her child. When he asked how she got hurt, she said people from the imperial capital had attacked her. That meant she had flown all the way from the capital to here. Regardless, she wouldn't live long. She begged Takuya to save her child. After she said that, she passed away. After burying the mother monster, Takuya decided to let Yuno adopt the monster child. She ran to show her mother the new friend whom she named Kun-kun. Takuya then saw someone on a high cliff. He tried calling out, but they didn't respond. When he climbed up, they were already gone. It turned out they were 2 soldiers who had been chasing the monster mother and now had discovered Takuya. They reported back to the God Emperor. The Emperor ordered an investigation to confirm if there was a shrine maiden. The next day, Yuno took Kun-kun out to play. Before leaving, Salis had given her daughter some words of advice. Later, Takuya also went out to gather food. The father and daughter played together, with Salis even preparing lunch for them. On the way, Takuya managed to kill a few monsters. They played until the afternoon. Yuno was feeding Kun-kun before heading home. From a distance, Takuya saw someone breaking into their house. Fearing for Salis, he rushed back and found a group of soldiers attacking her. In rage, Takuya drew his sword and killed one of them. But he was no match for their numbers and was beaten badly, then thrown outside. They revealed themselves as royal soldiers from the capital, acting on orders from the God Emperor to retrieve the Shrine Maiden. Seeing Takuya still trying to resist, they tied him up and were about to kill him. In that desperate moment, Salis grabbed a dagger from one of the soldiers and threatened to take her own life, but it wasn't just a threat. She stabbed the blade into her neck right in front of Takuya. While Yuno was on her way home, she encountered her mother again. Salis embraced the girl and promised that she would always be by her side before vanishing. Takuya had been beaten unconscious, and the soldiers took the sacred artifact and Salis's body away. When he regained consciousness and met Yuno, he apologized to his daughter for failing to protect Salis, but Yuno told him that her mother was still here, that she would always be with them and live on in their hearts. Encouraged by his daughter's words, Takuya regained some of his spirit. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital, after receiving the report, the God Emperor didn't care at all and simply ordered them to find a new shrine maiden. As for Takuya, he prepared to set off for the imperial capital. Since Kun-kun ate too much, they would have to leave it at home. Though it was a sad farewell, they had no other choice. Takuya gave Kun-kun a scarf as a parting gift. After that, the father and daughter departed, with Takuya's goal being to reclaim the sacred artifact and search for psychite for Kana. The journey there was extremely arduous and painful. Takuya did his best to keep his daughter's spirits up, but their water had run out, and there was still no sign of the city. Even the camel had collapsed from exhaustion. With no water or food, all they could do now was pray for divine mercy. The two pressed on through a sandstorm. Eventually, Yuno couldn't take it anymore and collapsed. In despair, Takuya carried his daughter, running in search of water. Fortunately, ahead of them was an oasis. He thought it might be a mirage, but it couldn't be at night. Sure enough, it was a real oasis. Takuya quickly gave water to his daughter, then let her rest while he went to check the surroundings. There, he found a girl bathing. She had no sense of shame whatsoever when she saw Takuya watching her. She outright invited him to have his way with her. That night, she introduced herself as Sarah. She explained that things were in chaos in the capital, so she had fled here. Specifically, a rebellion. Many people had risen up to kill the God Emperor. In the following days, Takuya allowed Yuno to rest at the oasis. When she had recovered, they continued their journey. Sarah also went with them, saying she was worried about the father and daughter, especially after learning that Takuya also wanted to take down the God Emperor. Suddenly, it started to rain. Sarah suggested they rest at the nearby temple. Since the door was locked, she used some online trick she knew to pick it in 5 minutes. But after they entered, Sarah suddenly turned on them. She summoned royal soldiers to arrest the two of them, as both were wanted fugitives. Yuno was captured for being the daughter of a shrine maiden, while Takuya was taken away with several others. This place turned out to be a gemstone mine and also a prison for Takuya. There, he met a man named Bazaku, the warden, who took an unusual interest in Takuya. Bazaku later brought out collars for the prisoners and knocked them out. Meanwhile, Yuno was taken to meet the God Emperor. At first, she resisted, but upon seeing his face, she calmed down. At the prison, Takuya was placed in a cell with other inmates. A green-haired young man woke him up and invited him outside for food. Takuya learned that this guy was Karts, and another person was called Cucumber. Everyone there had heard the rumor that Takuya had slept with a shrine maiden. Hearing someone bring up his late wife made him very uncomfortable. When he asked the two why they were imprisoned, they didn't answer, probably not because they were rebels. Suddenly, a red-haired guy named Joe barged in, declaring his love for someone. He punched Takuya and stole his food. Bullying of newcomers was everywhere. Takuya, already in a depressed state, didn't bother to argue. The next day, Takuya began work. He noticed that one of the buildings looked a lot like the one on Triangle Island. Cucumber came to find Takuya and arrogantly tried to teach him how to survive in prison, even though when Takuya was beaten up earlier, Cucumber hadn't dared to say a word. Takuya noticed there were very few guards around and wondered why no one tried to escape. His question was quickly answered when one guy tried to run and was instantly struck dead by lightning from a nearby device as soon as he crossed the boundary. Takuya also learned that the psychite here was called Spirit Stone. Cucumber didn't do heavy labor like Karts because he was favored by Bazaku and appointed as a supervisor. In general, new prisoners were assigned to mine spirit stones and then crystallize them. Takuya was taken to a place where prisoners built coffins for shrine maidens, and the crystallization process was also carried out there. That evening, after work, Takuya and Karts returned to their cell. Up ahead, he saw a crowd gathering. Looking closely, he saw they were beating up Kun-kun, so Takuya immediately rushed in to save it. In this place, monsters were regarded as livestock, so the prisoners planned to eat Kun-kun. Of course, Takuya wouldn't allow that, so he set Kun-kun free. The ringleader, Joe, showed up wanting to teach Takuya a lesson just as well, since Takuya also wanted to settle the score from yesterday. So much for the redhead's tough act. Takuya smashed a rock into him in one blow, and that was it. When the commotion attracted attention, Bazaku came to inspect. Takuya and Karts pushed all the blame onto Joe, and as a result, he was punished. That night, Joe's screams echoed throughout the prison. Cucumber explained that Bazaku was the kind of man who enjoyed torturing others. He got excited from inflicting pain. The next day, while working, Takuya kept surveying the area. He learned that the device was called the Garzel Tower, and that the ruins on Triangle Mountain were part of this mining site. It was certain now that the so-called spirit stones were actually psychite. Just as he was about to sneak one, Bazaku caught him. Though Takuya tried to deny it, he was still taken for inspection. Nothing was found on him, but the pervert still wouldn't let it go. He even went as far as to check Takuya's back hole. Returning to the cell, Takuya swore to make him pay. The next day, he continued searching for an escape route. The only way to avoid being struck by lightning was to escape through a tunnel. For a whole year, Takuya kept searching for a way out. After many attempts, he finally found an exit resembling the well at Old Man Ryu's house. But behind him, Joe had discovered him. Takuya returned and told Cucumber and Karts about the escape route he had found. That day, however, there was a new prisoner, a woman. Ignoring that for now, Takuya told the two he had found a way out. But Cucumber said now wasn't the right time. Ignoring them, Takuya snuck into the crystal refining workshop, stole a spirit stone, and returned to the well with a rope. Just as he was about to throw the rope hook up, Joe showed up and attacked him, then climbed up first. But what awaited him above was not freedom. He was struck dead by lightning. Guards arrived and captured Takuya, throwing him into solitary confinement. In the cell next to him, Bazaku was interrogating the new female prisoner. During the interrogation, Takuya learned that the girl's name was Amanda, leader of the resistance. After Bazuku left, Takuya struck up a conversation with her. Having realized that Amanda was Alia's younger sister, Alia used to talk about Amanda often. Regretfully, he had to tell her that Alia was dead. Amanda said her sister had trusted the capital too much, but the truth was that shrine maidens and their rituals were all fake. Every 400 years, the god emperor would murder a shrine maiden and pass it off as part of a ritual in order to control the people. Currently, the resistance was fully prepared and only awaited the order to launch a full-scale attack. Amanda asked Takuya for his help, and he agreed without hesitation. He had to save his daughter. Amanda gave him the symbol of the resistance so that when he got out, he could seek their help. Once released from solitary confinement, Takuya sought out Cucumber and Carts. As expected, both of them were members of the resistance. Every night, Bazuku would come to Amanda to extract information. Since she kept silent, he gouged out one of her eyes. On Takuya's side, after planning with Cucumber and Carts, he deliberately picked a fight with the guards to get thrown into solitary again to meet Amanda. He shared the plan with her. The next day, Cucumber laid out the plan again. They would create chaos in the mine and use that chance to rescue Amanda. The operation would happen on the day when the coffins were taken out because on that day, the Garzel Tower would temporarily shut down. However, there was still a backup tower, and neither Cucumber nor Carts knew how to disable it. But Takuya did more accurately. He knew how to destroy it, since he had done it once before. With only the three of them, the plan would take too long. At that moment, the other prisoners offered to help. Everyone had family. Takuya warned them that people would die in this operation, and anyone afraid could back out now. But no one moved, and they all joined in. That night, because Cucumber tipped off Bazuku that Takuya seemed close to Amanda and might know something, just as planned, Bazuku had him brought to his room. Strangely, there was a familiar-looking carpet inside. Getting straight to the point, Bazuku proposed a deal. If Takuya could extract information from Amanda, he would be allowed to see his daughter. Takuya pretended to hesitate for a moment before agreeing. He also requested to borrow his sword again to make it easier to extract information from Amanda, and Bazuku happily agreed. On the night of the plan's execution, when the guards shut down the Garzel Tower and brought the coffins outside, Cucumber told everyone to get ready, while Takuya went to the interrogation room to meet Amanda. He brought the sword with him, and Bazuku was waiting outside. Just when Bazuku was about to get what he wanted, chaos erupted outside as the prisoners began to rise up in rebellion. Bazuku ordered the guards to restart the tower, but they were afraid the lightning might hit their own comrades, so Bazuku had to go himself to reactivate the tower. Taking advantage of the moment, Takuya freed Amanda. He threw the sword out to Carts and Cucumber so they could destroy the backup tower. Meanwhile, Bazuku arrived at the main tower and started wildly firing lightning bolts everywhere. Cucumber and Carts were almost struck. Takuya and Amanda ran up to stop him, but they were ambushed, and Bazuku captured Amanda. He demanded Takuya use the tower to kill all the rebellious prisoners, or he would kill Amanda. At that tense moment, below them, Carts and Cucumber managed to throw the sword into the backup tower and destroy it. While Bazuku was still stunned, Takuya charged him. After years in this place, the young boy who once got beaten up by the coward video had now become a father and a strong man. Takuya shoved Bazuku straight into the coffin that had been prepared for the shrine maiden. At that moment, the tower where Takuya was also began to collapse, and the elevator was no longer working. Were they going to die here? In that critical moment, Kunkun appeared in human form. Takuya quickly pulled Amanda out so Kunkun could drag them away. Kunkun carried both of them straight to the imperial capital, but just before they arrived, it ran out of strength and its life began to fade. Knowing it would not live much longer, it asked Takuya to release it. It thanked him for saving it and said it was very happy to have played with him and his daughter. Amanda handed Takuya a knife to do what had to be done. Though deeply tormented, there was no other choice. After burying Kunkun, Amanda said they would rest and set out the next day. That night, the two of them talked a lot about family. On Cucumber's side, when he heard that Takuya and Amanda had gone missing, he knew they had reached the imperial capital, so he also set out. In the capital, news had already arrived that the prison had fallen. The god emperor wanted to send troops to suppress the uprising, but a girl stepped forward to take on the mission. Eventually, Takuya and Amanda reached the capital and split up to act separately. As Takuya wandered around, he discovered that the place was extremely impoverished. Food was distributed in bowls that contained very little, and everyone looked emaciated. While eating, Takuya was accidentally recognized by the guards as a wanted man. As he was running away, a civilian helped him escape. Thinking it was a resistance fighter, it turned out to be Eriko. Before talking, Eriko restored Takuya's memories. She had come to De La Granto to hunt down a rank-dimensional criminal, specifically Old Man Ryu, who had somehow found his way here. Eriko's job was similar to that of the TVA and Loki, to prevent threats that could affect the timeline. Without explaining too much, Eriko told Takuya that the world's 400-year cycle was about to occur again, and that this world was facing a potential crisis, possibly a collision event. Eriko gave Takuya a device for measuring events. It would detect disruptions in event elements. She could only help him up to this point, so she wished him success on the path he had chosen. Takuya then went to the hidden headquarters of the Resistance and reunited with Cucumber and Amanda. Amanda reported that the Imperial capital had found a new shrine maiden, Salus's daughter. Additionally, several Resistance bases had been wiped out by a person wearing a mask. After finalizing the plan, they would attack the castle at dawn. That night, Takuya broke the collar around his neck, and inside it was surprisingly a psychite stone. Now, all he needed was the relic to save Kana. At that moment, Amanda came to his room. Since tonight might be the last night for both of them, she had something to ask of him. She then undressed, and the two of them made love. The next morning, everyone disguised themselves as soldiers and split up to act. Amanda's group entered through the back entrance, while Takuya's group went through the underground sewer path, but they were blocked by a sealed door that wouldn't budge no matter how hard they pushed. So Takuya decided to use a bomb, but just as he was about to light it, the masked girl appeared. Takuya told his two friends to run ahead while he handled her. The girl sent people to pursue them and then stayed behind to face Takuya one-on-one. However, during their exchange of attacks, Takuya struck off her mask and it turned out to be Yuno. But the girl seemed not to remember him and continued her assault. Not wanting to harm his daughter, Takuya detonated the bomb and escaped. He regrouped with Cucumber and Karts and told them everything. He asked that if they ever encountered the girl again, to let him be the one to face her. They then proceeded to a prison and, going deeper inside, the three of them discovered a special cell. To their surprise, the one imprisoned inside was Old Man Ryu. Before they could even understand the situation, Ryu explained that the God Emperor had collaborated with something called Mother to create this place in order to imprison him. On Amanda's side, she had reached a room that looked extremely important, but her team couldn't unlock it. Suddenly, they encountered Sarah again. Back with Takuya, he was about to leave Ryu behind, but the old man said he knew where Yuno was. He revealed that the divine offering ritual was real. In order to insert the sacred artifact into the shrine maiden's body, she had to sacrifice one function of her being. Takuya's biological mother had offered her sight to the gods, his wife had offered her voice, and now his daughter had offered her consciousness to the gods, resulting in complete memory loss. There was a way to help Yuno, but Ryu demanded to be freed first. While Takuya was still hesitant, Eriko arrived. She confirmed that this was indeed the criminal she had been searching for. Takuya offered to let her handle it, but as the two spoke, Ryu hypnotized Cucumber and Karts to release him. Once freed, he immediately fled. Knowing that letting him escape would throw the capital into chaos, Eriko gave chase. On Amanda's side, with Sarah's help, they finally managed to unlock the room, after which Sarah left. Returning to Takuya's group, they had found the Shrine Maiden's chamber. Since there were too many guards, Cucumber and Karts lured them away. Takuya entered to find Yuno. As soon as she sensed him, she went into combat mode. Takuya dodged while trying to revive her memories using things like Kun-Kun's scarf or Salus's name. In the midst of a sword swing, Yuno struck the stone pedestal where she usually rested, and thanks to that, she regained a fragment of her memory. Takuya hugged her tightly to help her calm down. Meanwhile, Cucumber and Karts reunited with Amanda's group. As they moved further inside, they found strange devices, and then a robot appeared before them. Back with Takuya, he told his daughter to act normally for now, because if the Shrine Maiden suddenly went missing, it would trigger chaos. He said he still had one thing to settle, and would return to get her afterward. Takuya then took up his sword and went to find the God Emperor to avenge his wife. But when he confronted the God Emperor, the man showed no surprise and instead said he had been waiting for him. When the figure removed their mask, it was actually Takuya's stepmother. She apologized for Salus's death and handed over the relic, knowing that Takuya needed it. Takuya could see that she had changed a lot. To tell the full story would take too long, but during Takuya's first dimensional jump, not only he but also his stepmother had been transported, except she had ended up in Delay Granto. There, she had been aided by Ryu, who was not human. Under his guidance, she was given control over something called Mother, which she governed under his supervision. Over the years, the people of Delay Granto lost the ability to interface with the unified computer. At the same time, Mother discovered Ryu's ambition to rule the nation, so it allied with Takuya's stepmother to imprison him. Eventually, she became the God Emperor herself. On Amanda's side, the girl they were facing was just a projection. It introduced itself as AI, an artificial intelligence. It knew everyone's names and their pasts. Both the stepmother and the AI then explained that thousands upon thousands of years ago, on Earth, there had existed an extremely advanced civilization commonly referred to as the Ancient Earthlings. But one day, that civilization faced a massive threat. Scientists predicted that countless meteors would fall and everyone would be doomed. Facing the threat of extinction like the dinosaurs, they developed a new technology. They transported a massive island, or in other words, a fragment of Earth to a different, safe dimension. This island was named Delay Granto. The leader of the Exodus was a female scientist named Grancia. She developed many different kinds of technology to create various things like resources, artificial air, and even living creatures. However, because the environment was too different, those life forms gradually died. It seemed that all efforts to survive in the new space had failed. But then a glimmer of hope lit up. The Spirit Stone, also known as Psychite. Thanks to it, they were able to survive on the drifting continent. But once that was resolved, another issue arose. The scientists had miscalculated Delay Granto's orbital path, and a phenomenon occurred every 400 years. Earth and the continent would merge together and then separate again. That was the orbital cycle of the continent. Only Grancia could control this continent, but her death would come when she grew old. So she transferred her life into a data form so she could control the continent even after her death. However, there was a problem. Grancia needed a catalyst in order to project her consciousness and synchronize. Grancia needed a human girl, specifically, a priestess. Her program would scan and select a suitable person, and the 400-year cycle was approaching. If Grancia failed to operate, Earth and the continent would collide. At that moment, an explosion would occur. Therefore, the priestess had to synchronize with Grancia to prevent the collision and save both worlds. The cost of this was inevitable. Though it was heartbreaking to say, Yuno might disappear after the ceremony succeeded. As for Amanda's group, after hearing the whole story, they were deeply shocked, because what they thought was fiction turned out to be the truth. Now they were completely disoriented. Soldiers stormed in and surrounded them. The group was brought out for public execution, but the Divine Empress arrived in time to stop it because she needed their power. Amanda then returned to base to report the situation to everyone. This time, they would help the Divine Empress. Of course, they still followed her because the goal of the Revolutionary Army was to improve the lives of the people. Meanwhile, Yuno went to find Takuya, but now he didn't know how to speak to his daughter. However, the girl already knew that she had to sacrifice herself and would never see her father again, but she still cheerfully accepted it because she wanted to save her father and everyone else. Takuya was extremely moved by his daughter's courage. He gave her a gem from an artifact as a protective charm. Eriko was still pursuing Ryu, but while fleeing, he used his power to blast Eriko into the drainage system. The next day, the ceremony began. The Revolutionary Army was also present to ensure the ritual proceeded safely, because according to the Divine Empress's prediction, Ryu would return. Soon after, the Divine Empress gave a speech to the public, and Yuno appeared. She stepped up to the platform. A containment chamber appeared, and when Yuno entered, she met Grancia. Grancia told her it would be very painful, so she should endure it. Synchronization would take 1800 seconds, so everyone had to wait. It seemed too easy. Ryu suddenly appeared and launched a powerful attack. But the chamber wasn't affected at all. The Divine Empress asked what he was doing. Interfering with the ritual brought him no benefit. However, he said that the destruction of both worlds would return humanity to the eternal realm. He meant death, in case anyone didn't understand. As an immortal being, he only needed to speed up that process. The Divine Empress then activated the containment system to trap him. But there were still 25 minutes left, and he wanted to see what they could do. Takuya's detection device was reacting wildly. Dark clouds gathered, and earthquakes began. Yuno was worried for her father, but Grancia told her to focus. Since he couldn't affect the priestess directly, Ryu used another method. A spatial rift appeared, and then strange insect-like creatures emerged and flew chaotically everywhere. They began attacking the people. Amanda's group had to stay behind to protect the containment pillars. The creatures started targeting the control devices. Suddenly, multiple spatial rifts opened up and sucked everyone, and Amanda was also being pulled in. Takuya tried to save her, but Amanda had already accepted her fate and let go, so she wouldn't hold Takuya back. According to Ryu, those sucked into the spatial rifts would be sent to another world. There were still 900 seconds left before the synchronization process would be complete, but many people had already perished. Too much time had passed. Ryu took Takuya's mother hostage to force him to destroy the containment device. Amidst the chaos, one of the insect-like creatures approached Eriko. Turns out it was Abel. He helped her stand up once again. On Takuya's side, he was still hesitating, so Ryu took matters into his own hands. He used his powers to make someone charge in and destroy the device. After destroying the containment, he stabbed Takuya's mother and gave the mother and son a chance to say their final goodbye. He then revealed his true form to destroy the chamber, but before he could land a few blows, Eriko arrived. Abel charged in to restrain the demon so that Eriko could aim and shoot. Unable to release it, he told her to shoot both of them. Though it broke her heart, Eriko was forced to act. She fired and destroyed both the monster and Abel. Before fading away, he thanked her for always looking for him. After the incident ended, Takuya went to his dying stepmother. In the end, her death couldn't be avoided. She was happy that Takuya had grown strong, just like his father. Takuya could only cry at the loss of the mother he loved. With 200 seconds left before synchronization finished, an alert sounded. The dimensional boundary had been breached. Both events were happening at the same time, so even if the ritual succeeded, Earth could still collide with De La Granto. The chance was 50-50. Eriko was being forcibly removed after completing her mission. She hoped they'd meet again someday before disappearing. After the synchronization process was completed, Yuno said her final goodbye to Takuya before leaving. Takuya promised to find her no matter what. A pillar of light appeared, enveloping everything. Yuno and Grancia appeared in outer space, but it seemed they had failed. The entire continent was about to crash into Earth. Yuno almost gave up, but Grancia had one last method to fully unleash the event tremor. However, she didn't know what would happen to Yuno's body. The girl accepted the risk, so Grancia began reversing time, bringing all of human civilization back into the past. This was the infinite cycle of repeating events. Even now, another De La Granto was drifting in the dimensional fracture, repeating the same approach and separate process with this world. When the continent collided with Earth, it caused an explosion. At this part, I don't understand it well myself, but Takuya returned to a checkpoint to save Kana, and the mother she referred to was actually Amanda. He brought the Psychite crystal back. Kana was very happy about this. Takuya told her that Mio and Yuki were still there, and they would bring her more happiness, but he had to go now. Someone had been waiting for him for 1,000 years. Kana thanked him before Takuya vanished. He continued back to the place where everything began. Takuya ran to the cliff where Yuno had just appeared. The girl had failed to save Earth, and De La Granto had crashed down here 8,000 years ago. Thanks to the gem her father gave her, she was able to get here, but now she had to leave according to the rules of the event. However, this time, he wouldn't let his daughter be alone anymore. The two disappeared together. Takuya once again met his father, and his mother was also there. His father had witnessed his entire journey and praised him. Now, Takuya and Yuno would travel to the edge of all events, the gateway of fate that opened up the true history his historian father had long wished for. As the observer of the Vrinda tree, he would continue to search throughout history. That's it for now. He was glad the father and daughter could have one last conversation. He would still await their reunion someday. Yuno and Takuya had arrived in the void. The two were drifting along the stream of events. they discovered a sprout beginning to grow. This tree would remember everything about this world. Yuno decided to name this child Takuya. That is where the anime ends. What do you think of this series? Goodbye.